Hello and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. If you're returning, thank you as always for being here. I'm super excited to share these brand new fall DIYs with you. So let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting. DIY number one. All right, I have a white styrofoam pumpkin from the Dollar Tree and my plaster chalk paint by Waverly, and I'm going to be giving this a couple of coats. But first, when I opened up my paint, I noticed that it was getting a little thick. I've had this for a couple of years, and over time the paint tends to dry out, so just added a little bit of water. I'm gonna shake it up really well and bring my paint right back to life. So as I mentioned, I'm just going to be giving this a couple of really good coats of paint, and once that is done, we'll be able to move on to decorating. I saw something online that I thought was really, really pretty, and it's what inspired me to do this. Gonna go ahead and peel that sticker off so I can paint the whole pumpkin. And if you have, oh, I forgot about this part. So the stem, this is brushed gold by Folk Art, and just gonna give the little stem a paint of the gold. But as I was starting to say before, if you have little blingy strips that are single file lines, so to speak, this project would be a lot easier. I didn't have anything like that in my stash, so I am using these also from the Dollar Tree. I think it still came out really pretty, but they were definitely a little harder to work with because they're thicker. So the first thing I'm going to do is cover up that seam going around the pumpkin. If you use the orange or the black pumpkins from the Dollar Tree for this, they have the seams going down the sides rather than around the middle, and I find those a little bit easier to get rid of because you can actually sand those down and make them pretty much disappear. I didn't think that this would work as well because of all of the ridges in the pumpkin, and I don't know, there was just something different about the way that the pieces came together at that seam. So I opted to just cover it up with my little blingy strips here, and it worked out just fine. I did take away one of those little beads at the very tip, but didn't realize that it was sitting on basically an adhesive strip that's completely solid. So I ended up having to cut that out to allow me to join this strand with the first strand that I put down. So I'm just going to be able to butt it right up against there. I was just having trouble getting it lined up. And then I can continue on my way around the rest of the girth of the pumpkin. And when I get to the end, I'm going to do the same thing. I'll be trimming down. You can see how it's kind of rounded there at the starting point. So I'm going to be trimming it off in such a way that it curves around the starting point so that it looks, so it camouflages the seam. So it looks like it just continues on with no seam there. So once we have that down, I'm going to go ahead and use some more of the, I'm calling them bling strips for lack of a better term. I don't know what these are called, and I can't see the package on there, and I forgot to look at it before I threw it away. But I'm going to now come in and create a pattern. And this is where I was saying, if you have thinner strips to work with, it would be a little bit easier. I'm making it work by pulling on it relatively tight and kind of stretching the outer edge to come along with me as I curve it. So if you're working with straight lines, these are great, but a little bit more challenging when you are trying to do some curly cues with them like I'm doing here. I'm going to come in and do the same thing on this side of the pumpkin, and I end up doing a total of 3. So keeping in mind that I only had 3 of these strips left, I did make sure that I was kind of going in thirds around the pumpkin. And so just going to continue to pull and stretch and curve that around. And then I'll come in and do the same thing with the last strip. They weren't all completely uniform. I noticed that some curved around in curly cues more than others. But I think it made for a really pretty effect and a really pretty pattern in the end. This last one I ended up, because maybe I was trying to cover a little bit more area, perhaps. I'm not sure. Maybe I had not quite done it in thirds here, but because of the surface area I was trying to cover, I ended up not having it curly cue quite as much, but I did have that leftover piece from when I was wrapping it around the middle of the pumpkin that I was then able to go ahead and put down. So you can see I have kind of a white space there. So I'm going to notch out that little, sorry, I'm off camera there, but I'm basically notching out that little piece to allow it to butt up against the original one there. Excuse me. And just curving it around the rest of the way. And this is done. I think it turned out super sweet. It makes me think of Cinderella for some reason. I'm not really sure why. But leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of this one. DIY number 2. All right, I have a couple of planters, and then I have this curtain rod, finial, I think it's what it's called. I got this, it was a set of 2, and I got them on clearance, 70% off the lowest price, so it ended up being like $1.50 for the 2 of them. So really fantastic price. I've had it in my stash for a while, and I am using my hot glue gun to melt a hole in the middle of the bottom of the one bucket. I did try on the other one. I tried putting a nail through it and I ended up splitting the bottom of the bucket. So I don't recommend that. I think you definitely need to melt it. And I created a hole that actually ended up being just perfect for the finial to be screwed into. I first thought I might need to use the washer and the bolt that came with it, but it turned out I didn't need them at all. In hindsight, maybe I should have gone ahead and used them anyway, just to make sure that eventually it doesn't fall apart, but it's all right. I went with it and worked with it, and I'm gonna screw it off right now because I wanna paint this in just a minute. So I don't wanna get paint on my finial, so I'm just gonna set that aside. And apparently I had a lot of cleaning up to do on the top of that bucket. So I'm just lining it up, and I'm going to be dropping a generous bead of hot glue just on the inner edge of my one planter. My thought here is to work quickly, and then when I place it down on top of the other one, have it kind of ooze down into the second planter so that it seals it, basically. It wasn't 100% successful, but I'm also trying to make sure I have all of the lines on the planters lining up here, because I want them to look like the little bumps, I guess. Not bumps, but you know how a pumpkin is with where it's got the, what do you call those indentations along the edges of the pumpkin? I don't even know what they're called, but that's what I'm going for here. So in these areas where I had the glue cooled before I could get this sealed, I'm just going back in and adding a little bit more glue. It is oozing out a little bit, so I grabbed a popsicle stick and just scraped it away. It did end up smearing it a little bit on the outside of the planter, so I rubbed it down with my fingers, and then once it was all cool, I did grab a sanding block and I just sanded away the excess hot glue, and that worked out just fine. So as I mentioned, I was going to paint this. This is my pumpkin chalk paint by Waverly, and I just gave it one good coat of chalk paint all over the entire piece. And once that was all dry, or at least largely dry, Yep, here we go, just painting the rest of it here. But once that was pretty much dry, I had a couple of spots that were still drying, but I went ahead and added my finial back to the top for my little pumpkin stem. And this is a paper wrapped wire that I've been using in some of my projects. I'd gotten it off of Amazon, and I just did a little bit of a length. I'm going to be making our little pumpkin, what do they call those? The little squiggly things come off the pumpkin. So I tucked it under the finial and tightened it up the rest of the way. You might have noticed that I just scraped off a little bit of the paint by accident, so I'll get that touched up in a second. But for the time being, I'm just kind of creating my little not finials, squigglies. I do know what those are called, and right now it's escaping me, but touching up the area where I had scratched the paint off. And once that was all good, I went into my stash and grabbed some little greenery pieces that I had left over. This one was 3 little leaves that had a hole in the center, so I just kind of threaded that down over the one little tendril. Maybe that's the word I was looking for. And secured it with some hot glue at the base. And then those other little leaves, I am going to they have little, it's a hole. It's like a little tubular thing at the end where they had been on the picks and I just pulled them off. So I'm just slicing away the back half of that part, and I'm able to kind of lay it down. You can kind of see it's like a little boat shape there. And I'm laying it right down over the tendril, and it looks like it's growing out of this piece of the wire. I don't know. I thought it was really cool, actually, the way it worked out. So I'm just gonna cut the back side off of it. There was a little thing at the end there that I wanted to trim off too, but then I was having trouble with these large scissors, so I ended up going in and grabbing my little tiny Cricut scissors. And I apologize because I know I'm out of frame here, but just basically cutting open the back side of that and making room for it to settle down onto the wire, essentially. So I'm going to zoom in here in just a second so you can see it better, but I just added a little bit of glue, setting it down on the wire, the paper wrapped wire, and I'm just going to hold it there until the glue has had a chance to cool down. So hopefully you can see what I'm talking about there. And then I'm just going to continue doing that with the last 2. As I was doing this third one, my plan is to do it to the very tip of the tendril. And as I was applying it, I thought, you know what? I might have been able to just slide it right onto the end of that wire and not have to bother with cutting it. And so I tested it out with the last one. Sorry, the other leaf is in the way, but it actually fit perfectly on there. So I just dipped a little bit of hot glue on the end and was able to slide it right on. I didn't have to cut that one at all. DIY number 3. Okay, this is a little sign from the Dollar Tree I've had in my stash for a while. I'm gonna make it double-sided. The front side of it's pretty cute, and if you have a glass door that you wanna hang it on, this is a great way to make it the back side of it pretty. So you've got a double-sided sign, but these are just some little bamboo pieces that I had salvaged from a silverware organizer that we had gotten from Costco, and we didn't need these little section pieces because we were putting some larger utensils in that organizer, so I am using them for crafting. Waste not, want not, right? So once I had gotten them all lined up, I'm just gluing them down one at a time, and as I apply one, I'm holding the other one in place just so that I don't end up bumping anything and knocking them off center or making them not straight, crooked. That would be. So I just did that with all 6 of those pieces. And then I was ready to start decorating it. I didn't care for that heavy, I don't know if it's like a heavy cardboard or whatever that material is. I didn't like the way that it looked around the edge, so I wanted to kind of camouflage it on this side. And I thought it looked actually kind of pretty having the ribbon kind of showing from the back side when you were looking at the original side, if that makes sense. So now I'm just trying to figure out how I want to start with this piece because I don't want the raw edge to be seen. I want it camouflaged on the back. So I found a place where it was going to be completely hidden from the front side, so to speak, and just started applying it that way. Now, one thing I will say, I have used this ribbon on other projects, not recently, but I clearly had already used some of it. And these Dollar Tree ribbons, they tend to be only, I think they're 3 yards, so 9 feet worth of ribbon. I didn't think to check to see how much ribbon I had left on this spool. So I ended up not having quite enough for the project. I did come up with a plan B, which I actually think turned out pretty cute. It wasn't exactly what I had in mind, but it all worked out in the end, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But I'm essentially taking this ribbon all the way around in one single piece, one whole piece. And so as you saw, as I get to the corners, I'm just folding it over kind of at a diagonal. And so regardless, you're going to want to have a double-sided ribbon for this project. So I'm going to go ahead and continue wrapping it around. And then when I got to the end, I did also have not a dilemma, but I had to figure out how to finish this off so that it wouldn't, again, show the raw edge of the ribbon. So I ended up taking it all the way down to that corner, and I'm going to fold, and here's where I realized I didn't have enough ribbon. I was like, oh, darn. So there's no way I'm covering up all 3 of these, but I figured it out. So in the meantime, finishing off, I guess I'm looking for some other ribbon right now. Yeah, because, I was distracted. So I'm going to end up using that other ribbon in the middle piece, and then I'll use the orange down on the 3rd piece. So I'll alternate them. Wasn't ideal, but it was a good solution. And this way you're going to get to see 2 different ways of doing it. And so if you have enough of one ribbon, you can see which one you like better. But back to finishing off this, I'm going to tuck in that, hopefully you saw I folded it at a diagonal, and I'm going to tuck it right into that corner. So just trim off a little bit more because I had a little bit too much ribbon going into that corner, made it too bulky. And once I figured out how I wanted it, I was ready to go back in and glue it down. So there we are. I was happy with that. Very happy with that. Pull it up. And I was trying to see if I could glue it without lifting it out, but I decided I really needed to bring it back out again. Now, when I did it this first time, you probably saw I tucked some glue up underneath there, so I've got glue going all the way. It made it really difficult to get this nice and straight because the glue wanted to grab the fabric. So I made it work, but I found an easier way to do it on the next go round. So at any rate, there's the first one. I went ahead and I did the same exact thing with the 3rd one. Started off in a way that was going to camouflage it, worked my way around. And so now I did not take the glue all the way to the end. I'm not sure if you saw that, but I took it about 1/4 inch from the end. Now I'm folding it under, tucking it in, and then I'll just come in with a teeny bit of glue to get that tucked in and under. So I found that a little bit easier. So hopefully that's helpful. And now I can do the middle piece. I'm doing it with this, I'm going to call it burlap for lack of a better term. And clearly I didn't have a whole lot of this either, but it was just enough for my purposes here. So again, I'm going to start it in a place where I can work with that raw edge. with this particular ribbon, because of the way that it's woven, I'm going to be able to completely camouflage that seam, and you would be really hard pressed to find it. You'd have to go looking for it to find it. So I'm going to cut it off right there and bring it together. You'll be able to see a little close up here in a second. Set my glue down. And then because of the way that's all woven and the way that the pattern is, I was able to tie them right together there. I was so happy that that worked out the way that it did. All right, so then I was trying to figure out what to do with it, and Rich happened to be down with me, and I was saying to him, what do you think? I don't know what to do. So you saw that I was looking at maybe doing some little leaves and an acorn that I had painted previously. The leaves were in my stash, previously painted by my sweet subscriber Rose, who had sent those to me. But Rich said, why don't you put fall into love? And I thought that was really sweet. So of course I had to do it. So this one is for Rich. So I have my paint marker. This is in olive green. I wanted a fall color that was going to be visible. Clearly this is not super visible. It was just a little too dark. I should have just gone with my white chalk paint in the first place. But once I was started, I was committed, and so I decided I would just come in with my white chalk paint and do some highlighting around the letters. So I came through and used the white on the right side and underside of each of the letters to try to give it some highlights and make it legible. And I think this really turned out pretty well. The only thing I will say, as I was editing, I noticed that I really needed to add a little bit more to the word into, and you're gonna see in just a minute. So sometimes it just takes stepping back from a project for a little bit so that you can look at it with new eyes. So I will definitely be going back and adding some chalk paint to some other parts of my letters here that I totally missed in the moment. I was struggling a little bit with the cursive, if you will, trying to figure out where I needed to put the white so I didn't completely mess it up. Trying to keep in mind that I was working with the downstrokes. So you can see me kind of going over it here just in the air because I'm trying to figure it out. I think you've probably heard me say on more than one occasion that I am very visual, so I have to kind of see it in my mind, which sometimes involves air writing. But I clearly missed the dot on the I, and that the underside of that I also, I'll probably go back in, and I missed the cross part of the T. So I will definitely be going back and adding a little bit more white to my into. And then I came in and I did the same thing with the love. And then I also came back and I traced back over everything because as it was drying, it was looking not quite vibrant enough. As I'm looking at it here on the camera or on the video screen, it looks much brighter than it actually did in person. So I find that intriguing. But as I said, I went back over all of it, just made sure that it was nice and bright and legible. And that was all I did for this one. Let me know what you think of this piece. Now it's time for a shout out timeout. Really nice rose. I especially love those pumpkins, but that truck is adorable. Great wreath and great Valerie. These are all resin, you guys. Valerie has been busy. Awesome. And nice Tammy. So beautiful. And her daughter's heart on there. And cute Kathy. Feeling this big time. All right. I would love to give you a shout out as well. If you have interest, just send me an email at craftedbycorie@gmail.com. DIY number 4. All right, this is a random pumpkin that I had had flowers all over at one point. I don't recall why I pulled the flowers off of it. I must have needed them for another project at one point. And then I have the stem that I was just fixing up here that it started to pull apart a little bit. And then I have a bag of potpourri. I was talking with Rich trying to figure out a couple of different project ideas, and he pulled out this potpourri and he said, "Hey, can you do something with this?" And I thought, well, maybe. So it's all fall colors. I was like, well, what happens if I try to cover a pumpkin with all of these little potpourri pieces? And it's something you could set on your shelf and it would smell good too. So it's going to be a little bit eclectic here, if that's the right word for this. Rustic? I don't even know what to call this, but I was trying to figure out if I should start from the bottom or from the top. Ultimately, the top won out, and it worked out quite well. So I am just going to put random little pieces here, trying to figure out if I want to put them right side up or upside down. There are a lot of various colors and textures, and there are a lot of neat little pieces here. So this is probably going to be a project either you love or hate. I actually ended up loving it. I think it's really cool looking in the end. And it's kind of like putting a puzzle together. There were definitely some pieces in the potpourri that were just too large to work with. There were these things in here. I don't know if you see that on the table there. It's kind of red. It's to the left of my left hand. It's kind of under my hand at the moment. But it reminded me of an apple core. I have no idea what it is. It must be some sort of a pod of some type, but it looks like an apple core to me, like a dried apple core. And yeah, I don't know what it is. If you happen to know what it is, I would love to know. But I ended up not being able to use those. They were just a little too bulky. So I was tending to stick with the pieces that were a little bit flatter. I did use some of the larger rounded pods in the end. I didn't think I was going to be using those. I thought that they were going to be too large as well, but I ended up being able to incorporate some of those, especially as I worked my way down the sides of the pumpkin. And I had some of the flatter pieces that were kind of sticking out because of the curvature of the pumpkin. So I took those opportunities to use some of those larger pods underneath and just kind of brought them in to cover more of that orange pumpkin. My goal here is really just to make sure that the orange is camouflaged. Wherever I saw some orange, I added a little bit more of the potpourri, and I just continued to do that until I had it all set. And I had that little, I think that's like a wheat stem that I thought was cute that I stuck in there next to the stem. But let me know what you think of this. And here we are with the final reveal. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the projects, remember to give me a big thumbs up, leave me a comment, just say hi, let me know which one was your favorite. And until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Take good care. Bye.